this is Christina Barton. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello, welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christine Barr, and today we're going to be talking about a couple different things. I was actually going to name this title, Is America Doomed? But it seemed like YouTube wasn't fond of that title when I tried to enter it into the stream and was like, that's an error. And I'm like, okay, maybe I should rename this thing. So it's called Ideological Subversion of America. And I've talked about this video. I think I've shared it before, but I want to share this video to you guys of this former KGB agent, because he talked about when you demoralize a society enough, you get to the point where facts don't matter, the truth doesn't matter. You can show people the evidence and they just don't care. It does not matter. So the scary thing about this interview is that he did it in, like, I don't know, the 80s, maybe earlier than that, but I think it was around the 80s. So someone said the original title seems appropriate. Yeah, I just didn't want to get dinged on YouTube. I might still get dinged, but it seemed like they really didn't like that title. So yeah, to change it. Or I could have risked it, but I decided not to. But there's a couple different things that have just popped up, that I think the gender ideology stuff is a huge example. You just see so much stuff all the time. And so I want to show a couple things today, talk about a couple of a post and other things that lend to this idea of facts don't matter. It doesn't matter if you show people true things. People advocate that it's moral to be dishonest, as a matter of fact. Also, I want to show you guys this interview with Philip Bump, who was on a podcast, who claimed that there was no evidence regarding to, like, ties with Hunter and his dad, who's the president of the United States, and their sort of collusion. And they gave an example, and he's just like, okay, fine, there's evidence. It was so childish. Granted, he was on the podcast for a long time, and apparently longer than he was meant to be. So him kind of rage quitting, I don't 100% like want to bash him for, but the line of questioning or his reaction or his denial of it is pretty silly, of there being some kind of tie to Hunter and his dad. Like, we don't have any sort of evidence. And then there was an interesting interview with Fauci that popped up when CNN questioned about the usefulness of masks. And Fauci's answer seemed very nonsensical to me. So I just want to show you those couple examples, and then also play the portion of Yuri's interview where he talked about ideological subversion, because I don't know, when you see it, I don't think you can unsee it. And I think there's a good reason to be worried, but you can't at the same time give up and just shrug your shoulders and say, it was nice knowing you, America, I guess that's it. I don't think that's the approach that we should have. Or because where else are you gonna go? Where else are you gonna go? This freest place in the world, and it doesn't feel particularly free, I think, a lot of the times right now. But again, where else are you gonna run away to? It's worth fighting for, worth trying to reverse course. But if we don't wake up, it's obviously gonna be too late. So anyway, I thank you guys for being in the chat. Thank you guys for watching, and happy holiday here. So it's Labor Day. So I thank you guys for joining me on this holiday day, as opposed to doing, cooking, grilling, and whatever else you could be doing, hanging out at the beach, whatnot. I don't know, but thank you guys. Maybe you guys are done with all that activity. But thank you for watching it live, and thank you to those who will watch this on the playback. My sister asks, like, are you gonna go live on Monday? And last time I streamed on a holiday, I did pretty well. And I was I kind of forgot it was a holiday to be honest. So I decided to go ahead and just stream, and if you guys were interested, you guys will pop in, or if you would watch it back. So again, thank you guys for watching. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, different articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. It costs to stream, it costs to run my website. So if you guys can support in that kind of way with that overhead, I thank you very much. If you're watching on Facebook, you guys can send stars. If you're watching on YouTube, you guys can send super chats or super thanks. I am monetized, at least on YouTube. So if you're watching, it'll accumulate like that. But YouTube does not always like the things that we talk about here. So sometimes they do demonetize. So, particular episodes. So it still helps when you guys go that extra mile and decide to give that super thanks or the chat, or if you just go to the website and you donate. Also, we're less than a week out now from the Tucker Carlson event. So if you are in Michigan, I very much encourage you to go to brightermi.com, or you guys can follow the link that's in the description to a discount. So I have some tickets on discount for a Tucker Carlson event. You'll be here on Sunday. So it'll be a very fun event. There's gonna be like a concert. They're gonna celebrate our first responders and police, and we're gonna give out a scholarship. So it'll be a great time. I'm looking forward to it. I briefly met Tucker Carlson a couple years ago at Trump's inaugural ball, so that he was very nice, at least for the little time that we got to talk. So I'm looking forward to seeing him again in person, and hopefully I will see you guys as well. So tickets do start at $50. The tickets that I have are discounted to $80. If you just go to Brighter MI, those particular tickets that I have in the block will be a bit higher. But if you want to sit somewhere else, you can just go to Brighter MI and pick your seats and do it that way. But those discounted tickets are available. But again, they start at $50. So if you want to see Tucker, there is an available option to you. And it is for a good cause. It is for a fundraiser for Brighter Michigan PAC. And they just want to support and help promote conservative ideals. When I was in the studio, like all the time, that was something I did not have to worry about financially. They just wanted to help promote conservative voices. So I'm grateful to them, and I always want the PAC to do well. So again, see Tucker, support good conservative causes. When I really tried to fight for like Prop 3 and stuff, they were helping me get commercials, and we were getting commercials and stuff on air. Like I cut the commercials and stuff, and they raised money for us to be able to do that, put on the radio. Unfortunately, we didn't. It was a very uphill battle. I knew that if we didn't get information out prior to people getting to the polls, then people were going to vote a particular way. And then you had we'd say something like, "Hey, this thing will happen," and then you'd get like the three huge like prosecutors to come and just lie on TV. It was pretty remarkable, everything they did to get that thing passed. But it is is what it is. But now Ohio has a big battle on their hands. So Godspeed to them, and we'll continue talking about that and trying to help with that cause there. And I hope other people. I know Vivek is from Ohio. I hope he is helping with that cause as opposed to just running for president, because he does have obviously a lot of money where he can make a difference. But anyway, let's get into it. So I do have a meme for you guys. Well, it's not a meme, actually. It's a video that I saw some people. It's a TikTok that people were circulating on Twitter, and that's how I saw it. This is Savvy had shared it. And so this goes into this subject. So we'll deal with the Fauci thing. We'll deal with the Philip Bump Biden, denial. But I guess we will start with this gender ideology, because that's my funny video, and it's a good one. And it's funny because I always use this example of Spider-Man when I talk about some of their ideology. And I say, when people explain like how they're a woman or how they're a man with gender identity, I'm like, how you're explaining it is no different than if my nephew or something explained that he was Spider-Man. So So this is basically the skit.
Whole day, just me and you. Where you want to go?
You know, Dad, I actually wanted to talk to you, one-on-one as a man.
As a man.
I'm Spider-Man.
Oh, you Spider-Man? Hey, don't shoot me with your webs, man. Hey, don't capture me. Don't capture me.
No, stop. Don't patronize me. Don't do that. I'm being very serious. My friend Brock came into school yesterday, and she is now a girl. Her parents put her through surgery
Surgery?
because she identifies as a girl.
Isn't he 9 years old like you?
After that, I was watching Spider-Man last night, and I realized I relate to Spider-Man.
Okay, no. All right, I see what's going on. Listen, you're just getting a little bit confused, son.
And I'm gonna start fighting crime.
No, son, you're not gonna do that. You're not.
Listen, Dad. I downloaded Twitter this morning, and I don't want to do this to you. Okay.
Listen.
I'm not trying to threaten you.
You're a child. I don't think you understand that. You're a child.
Don't move. Give me your money, y'all.
Hey, man.
Give me your money. Run your pockets right now.
Calm down, man. I got my son with me, man. Just calm down.
Give me your money.
All right. I'm gonna give you my money.
No. Don't do nothing, Dad. I got this.
No. Hey.
Hey, man, just ignore her.
Took a dark turn there. Very, very dark turn. So as I would say, people would bring up gender ideology, and I would say, if you are a woman, if you're a woman just because you feel like you're a woman, or you say that you identify as a woman, you can't even really explain what that is other than stereotypes. I'm like, how is that a convincing argument, or a more convincing argument than if my nephew was like, I'm Spider-Man because he likes Spider-Man. He identifies a lot, likes those characters, whether it's Miles or Peter, likes to jump around, has a lot of energy, got web shooters for his birthday last year, so has costumes, how is it any different from what folks are describing? So obviously put that in a skit, and it had a dark turn there, but I'm concerned about lots of things today, and the ideology. Let me show you guys this post from someone was doing a TikTok live the other day, and I just got to show it to you, I guess. I just got to show it to you, because there's stuff like this, I guess, all the time all over the app, and says, I am a woman, prove me wrong. Doesn't even look convincing. The burden of proof is on you. There was also a video I saw today, and I don't have it available to show you guys right now. I was gonna maybe stitch it or do a video later, but it was a person who was also not passing, and then they were talking about gender, and they're like, gender is like jelly donuts. You don't know what's inside. And I'm just looking at this obvious man, and I'm like, we know. We can tell. It's not hard. But he tried to say, oh, but the gender's inside. It's just like when you have a child, the whole point of his video though was that when you have a child like fresh out the hospital, you can't assign them a gender, and the child needs to assign their own gender because you don't know what they really are inside, because they're like a jelly donut. Now someone in the comments was like, because he's like, if I show you this donut and you see it's red, maybe you're like, oh, it's raspberry, but maybe it's strawberry. And someone in the comments was like, I'd be pretty mad if I went home with a donut that I thought was raspberry and it was like cherry or something. Like I want a particular. It's really not a good analogy, because you do ask if you're unsure. Like maybe you don't care. Maybe you don't care what is in the filling. But I mean, if I get a donut, I want that's filled. I don't really like jelly ones. I like the ones that have the like the custard inside, the Claire's, I guess. And I don't really want it to be the white cream is okay sometimes, but I prefer if it was the custard. Like that's what I want. And I do ask, you know? And there's ways that you can tell pretty obviously whether you have a male or a female child, and that's tied in with, you know, their gender. If you look at the etymology of the word, sex and gender are intertwined. This idea that they're separate is a newer invention. However, the idea of them being separate isn't really, it's not to keep them separate, it's to undermine sex. That's what it's for. Because that's why you have people, and I've said this so many times, but if it was just about how you identify, then why would these males who identify as female, why do they need to swim with other females? Why do that? They can still identify as a woman and swim with men. They can still identify as a woman and not take hormones and all that other stuff. So the idea isn't to separate gender and sex. It's not. It's to use the separation of them to really circle back and try to undermine sex differences. Like when you go to the bathroom to pee and to poop and all that stuff, and women's bathrooms don't have urinals, and we keep pads and other things in our stalls, and but you have men who are like, I'm going into the bathroom and you can't stop me. I've seen that so many times, of trans women who say, I'm going into the bathroom and there's nothing you can do to stop. And not just people who pass or look like they can pass. They say there's nothing you can do to stop it. So like they get some kind of kick out of you just being helpless in the situation, which is really creepy in my opinion, and just lends to the women don't feel safe when you get some kind of rise out of making them feel defenseless in the situation or helpless in the situation. And the fact that you want to intrude upon our private spaces so much makes us suspicious of your intentions. So it's a very strange world that we are living in. But it's not just these trans women, or and it's not really the trans men who are aggressive. It's usually trans women who are so aggressive with it, but it's also like their followers. It's also their followers, and they'll get all these like young women or millennial women or whoever who will just go to bat for them. So there's a video circulating around of Dylan Mulvaney at like Emerson College being welcomed by all these women, and they're just screaming so happy for him. And Dylan Mulvaney has, I mean, like one of the first videos he did when he was, transitioning or whatever on the days of girlhood was just like, I cried this much today. I shopped when I didn't need to, and et cetera, blah, blah, blah. And like, how am I doing as far as like being a woman? Now, very stereotypical, offensive, stereotypical things. And he's since apologized for videos like that, but he's just always been a character and continues to be like a character actor, but he gets paid tens of thousands of dollars to go and be like, hey, I'm a woman experiencing womanhood, etc. And I guess that says more about the institutions that are willing to pay for him to go and do that stuff. There was that movie that came out about what was that let me see if I can find it really quick. I did a TikTok about it. It was one of my top like TikToks. But there's a movie that's about like a coming of age story, and Dylan Mulvaney did a interview with the author, and women reacted to that so angrily, I think more so than any other instance involving Dylan, because that was really him intruding upon a space that he ought to not have been. But it also, they felt like the author also betrayed women as well. I cannot think of the film. Judy Blume, thank you very much. It was Judy Blume. I hadn't read the book, so I don't know. I guess I didn't have the same I reported on it, and I thought it was ridiculous, but the reaction that from women who actually read her books were just very devastated. This is Savvy had reviewed the movie and thought it was such a important film to speak to women's voices and things that were unique to women in this day and age. So she was really upset, angry at the fact that they included Dylan Mulvaney in the promotion of the film, because again, this was a place where he did not belong in the conversation. But there is something about all these girls who will insist that you need to accept being called cis and get over it. You need to use people's pronouns, and that will attack you and will say things like, oh, Dylan looks more like a woman than you do, which if you think that, those are your eyes. I don't know why you're proud of them. But they're your eyes nonetheless. I can't control your eyes and whatever you perceive with them and how your brain translates. I can't help you. But if that's what you want to do and how you want to throw insults at people, that's just what it is. But here's Dylan. So all these, girls just waiting. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit.
Oh my God, Misty does. We got two.
Yeah, so I think there are plenty of women who speak up for women and against, the sort of fad going on right now. Um, but I think men, particularly dads, have to stick up for their daughters, particularly in situations with people like Riley Gaines. Riley Gaines is speaking up for herself, but I'm talking about women who are going out in sports in high school and in college, and when they have to compete against someone like Williams/Leah Thomas and watch all these opportunities just dwindle away from women. I think men are going to have to stand up and say, no, this isn't right. We covered a story, I think it was last week in Canada. There's a weightlifter who's a man who competed with women and won, some more titles and stuff. But in another competition, there was a coach who competed and won. Not, he identified as a woman for the sake of the competition to prove a point, and ended up, winning. And so I think I don't want all these men to kind of flood into these sports and stuff, but perhaps if they all came together and just kind of pushed out all these women to prove a point, maybe that would be for the best. But I think men are going to have to stand up to some of this against these other actual toxic males to protect women. To protect women. I don't know what it is about the need of to admonish things that are popular. People are like, oh, you guys just keep making this person more popular because you keep talking about it. Exists nonetheless. Like, whether I talk about on YouTube or Twitter doesn't matter, because it still has like more than 10 million followers on TikTok. And that's where a lot of young people are. So just because I could not say anything, and then you guys just wouldn't know about it, and your kids would still be watching it and going to colleges like these, and they'd be still paying him tens of thousands of dollars, and you'd just be ignorant until, I don't know, your kid comes home and maybe they're talking nonsense. Who knows? At least you can be a bit informed about it. But women, I guess it's not just women, but particularly young girls, I think, love to just chase what is popular. Like, and whether you like him or you hate him, he's very popular, has a lot of followers, and people like to follow a crowd. And they do all this celebrity worship and hero worship. I don't get it. I'm not into that stuff at all. I think it's, I discourage people from having heroes and stuff. You can admire particular things about celebrities, but I don't think you should raise anyone too high on a pedestal, because people will tend to let you down anyway. So maybe it's just a cynical side of me, but but this is a person who has made fun of women, who has made a mockery out of women, who relies on stereotypes, who has spoken out against free speech, said that people using, pronouns, calling him he and him, thought that should be illegal. Gave veiled threats. I've done videos on that. That was one of my most popular videos on YouTube, probably why a lot of you have found me with some of that content about responding to Dylan. So I think what's really important and dangerous here is that we're pushing a very big lie on society. We're pushing a very big lie, and even pretending that it's virtuous to do so. And so I want to read to you guys this post. Now, this particular person, they post things to get people to talk, and they're one of the most highest paid people on Twitter, which I think it's cool if you get a payout on this, but also kind of like dangerous though, because people are posting a bunch of nonsense to get reactions from people. Like, people would do like clickbait titles to get people to click on articles, so they go read articles, and then they would get ads and stuff. It's kind of like that with Twitter posts. I think from people who have large followings, they want, or they're trying to build their followings, they'll say something outlandish to get some kind of reaction, and it's particularly bad in politics, which is unfortunate. it's really unfortunate that you can't just kind of take people at their word, because there's always a gimmick to what they're saying to earn money. And I'm not saying this is exactly what he's doing, but he knows the game well. But this is, but he's on the left, so I'm sure he actually like believes what I'm going to read to you, what I'm going to show you. And I think this is a travesty that people feel like this, but he's not alone. He's not alone in this. So this is Ed Christenstein. I don't know if that's how you say his name, but very popular figure on Twitter, has, close to 1 million followers. And again, gets really, really high engagement and payouts from Twitter. It's okay to think that pronouns are funny. It's okay to feel as though pronouns are strange. What's not okay is to intentionally make someone feel less human than you because they want to be identified with a certain pronoun that you refuse to use. Now, people say that it's dehumanizing language should not refer to someone as their preferred pronoun. That is absolutely silly. It's absolutely ridiculous. People will use language like, oh, you're saying I don't exist. I'm like, I wouldn't be talking to you if I didn't think that you didn't exist. What are you talking about? I'm being honest with you because I respect you enough to not coddle you with a lie. But let me keep reading. What's not okay is to intentionally make someone feel less than human than you because they want to be identified with a certain pronoun that you refuse to use. What harm is it doing to call someone a pronoun that you don't agree with? Stop being divisive and start trying to bridge that gap. If someone wants me to call them a dinosaur, I'll do it if I know it would be offensive if I don't. Life is too short to start arguments over this type of thing. And I think that it's important to maybe start arguments and discussions over this type of thing. Because the reason why people want you to refer to them as with their particular preferred pronoun is because they buy into the gender identity and they want you to affirm them. And we talked about this last week, but if you're using affirmation, aren't you treating them for their dysphoria? I don't think that's something that you should just throw around. I won't do it because it's a lie. Because it's something that's not true. And I don't want to affirm something that is a lie, even if that's what someone else believes. If someone thought that, I don't know, we were all like literally living in the Matrix, though I know people like to debate that for whatever reason. But let's say that they thought everything was an illusion, and if you feed into that, then they would start to take Neo type risk, like jumping off of buildings and all sorts of other things that could end to self-deletion. If you affirm that. But what's most important, that you just don't hurt their feelings? What if someone, has multiple, personalities, or people believe that different things are talking to them and you just go along with it because that's what they actually believe? That doesn't make it right to just affirm their delusion. It doesn't make it right. What does it cost to you? It would cost my honor. It cost, for starters, it costs my self-respect. It would show I don't respect you because I don't respect you enough to be honest. People talk about love language. I think I hate when someone is dishonest. Because if you're dishonest with me, I feel that you don't respect me enough to tell the truth. So if I'm going to lie to your face to just spare your feelings, it may be less awkward to socially do that, but it would also mean that I'm taking this cowardly path. So I think there's less respect on both ends for myself and that individual. Like, I can't stand in politics when people start just lying on their opponents. There's some things that, people stretch or whatever. There are policies that we disagree with, and the policy disagreements are fine. But when I see people just blatantly lie about stuff, it drives me up a wall. It annoyed me so much that the Trump campaign were passing out those placards with the Ron DeSantis stuff on it, and said the thing about them supporting slavery. And I spent a lot of time debunking that, talking about it nonstop. A couple weeks ago, anyway, had this Savvy on to talk about it. And I might have to do like another video. Their friends, who spread that misinformation, or mutuals rather, online, and I had to like reply to them and like, no, this is the wrong take, and people that I know that I've argued with about it. But if you don't like people lying on you, and I know a lot of people have lied on Trump, and I had to like correct things, I don't think it's fair to you to do the same distasteful thing to someone just because you don't like them, especially when you're so far ahead of the polls. I don't like it. It's and people are mad at me about like going at Vivek Ramaswamy for a couple things. I'm like, this man wears a truth hat and has said some things that have been untruthful. So I just want to point it out, because I think people should be honest to one another, especially when they're trying to earn your trust. That's what a vote is. They're trusting in you to move the country into a better direction. So I think you should at least be honest with them. So when it comes to the gender identity stuff, I cannot jump on board with it. I see it as a lack of respect. I don't see it as cruelty, to be honest with someone. But people are acting like it's virtuous to tell someone something that isn't true. And it's not creating a stronger, better world. It's not. It's not. So I'm going to show you guys another video of this young lady, upset, if you will call her a lady, who got kicked out of bar and was crying over pronouns and such. And I think this is a person with a pretty big following who talks about the frog pronouns and neo pronouns and all kinds of other stuff. If you're confused, that's fine. You're means you're probably living in a sane world. But these are kind of people that we're creating.
But like, there was like a really bad experience. Basically, I was just getting a drink at the bar, and they called both Azul and I ladies. After they were done making the drink, I went up and I was like, some people don't refer to themselves as ladies, but it's okay that you didn't know. And in a gay bar, so I should feel safe. Too bad turned it around. They got so mad at me, and they took the drink away from my wife and I. He hit the bar, like, because he was like, are you serious? You're doing the same thing to me. How? And then they kicked us out. I didn't think that was gonna happen. Like, how am I supposed to feel? This was the first time that I've like told somebody I felt brave enough to tell somebody my identity. And I just wanted to let him know, and I told him it's okay that you didn't know. He was still mad at me for being myself and for my wife being themselves. Just her. We were kicked out so fast. And I tried talking to the other person. He came over and was like, what's going on? It was another straight white man. When I told him he's just not respecting our identity and I don't understand why. And he was like, you know what, just leave. And I got kicked out of a bar. Technically supposed to be a queer bar, but it's just gay white men.
Yes.
Oh my god, it was supposed to be a positive experience. I felt so embarrassed.
I want to let you know.
Yeah.
I'm fucking furious and livid.
I know, it's so bad, Like, imagine if I didn't accept you for just being gay. Dude, like, are you serious? And he's told me, I'm being a gentleman calling you a lady. That's not something bad. Like, I'm just sharing that part, and I just wanted you to be like, okay, sorry.
What would you like?
What would you like to hear? And like, it's not like we even talk a lot. It felt like a dad, like, yelling at you. Oh my god.
Okay.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Some water.
I'm gonna have some water, and I'm okay. It's just hard.
One more thing that I wanted to add is that he yelled at my wife and told them that he sees us as ladies, and so he will always refer to us as ladies. Bye! And at the end of the day, transphobia within the community is so disgusting.
Just FYI to y'all non-binaries and whatnots. A lot of gay people ain't got time for that. Like they she's like, what if I didn't accept you for being gay? But a lot of gay people have been there, done that. They still think you are annoying. Also, because if you can choose your gender, there's just conflicting things because they're attracted to the same sex, but then people will change their gender and be like, well, I'm a woman, and call themselves a lesbian, but still, like, physically, technically, just be attracted to the opposite sex, and it just not all this stuff meshes well together. So not everybody's into it, and there's people who are gay who are like, I don't like this community anymore, and they just kind of are ducking out because they're embarrassed by stuff like that. So anyway, I want to show you guys this back in the 80s of this KGB defector named Yuri, and he talks about ideological subversion. And if you haven't seen it before, it's pretty incredible and prophetic almost. And he said basically things were kind of too late back then, and it was 1985. And we're going nowhere fast. We're going nowhere real fast with this stuff.
Several times before about ideological subversion. That is a phrase that I'm afraid some Americans don't fully understand. When the Soviets used the phrase ideological subversion, what do they mean by it?
Ideological subversion is the process which is legitimate, overt, and open. You can see it with your own eyes. All you have to do, all American mass media has to do, is to unplug their bananas from their ears, open up their eyes, and they can see it. There is no mystery. There is nothing to do with espionage. I know that espionage intelligence gathering looks more romantic. It sells more deodorants through the advertising, probably. That's why your Hollywood producers are so crazy about James Bond type of thrillers. But in reality, the main emphasis of the KGB is not in the area of intelligence at all. According to my opinion and opinion of many defectors of my caliber, only about 15% of time, money, and manpower is spent on espionage as such. The other 85% is a slow process, which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in 4 basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The result you can see, most of the people who graduated in the 60s, dropouts or half-baked intellectuals, are now occupying the positions of power in the government, civil service, business, mass media, educational system. You are stuck with them. You cannot get rid of them. They are contaminated. They are programmed to think and react to certain stimuli in a certain pattern. You cannot change their mind, even if you expose them to authentic information, even if you prove that white is white and black is black, you still cannot change the basic perception and the logic of behavior. In other words, these people, the process of demoralization is complete and irreversible. To get rid society of these people, you need another 20 or 15 years to educate a new generation of patriotically minded and common sense people who would be acting in favor and in the interests of the United States society.
And yet these people who've been programmed and, as you say, in place and who are favorable to an opening with the Soviet concept, these are the very people who would be marked for extermination in this country?
Most of them, yes. Simply because the psychological shock when they will see in future what the beautiful society of equality and social justice means in practice, obviously they will revolt. They will be very unhappy, frustrated people, and the Marxist-Leninist regime does not tolerate these people. They will join the links of dissenters, dissidents. Unlike in present United States, there will be no place for dissent in future Marxist-Leninist America. Here you can get popular like Daniel Ellsberg and filthy rich like Jane Fonda for being dissident, for criticizing your Pentagon. In future, these people will be simply squashed like cockroaches. Nobody is going to pay them nothing for their beautiful, noble ideas of equality.
So I just want to note, if anyone's just like, what does this have to do with like all the stuff we're talking about with gender identity and other stuff like that, you have to tear down institutions that we have in place to be able to rebuild it. And if you look at groups like Black Lives Matter, which was founded by admitted trained Marxists, like there's an interview with Patrisse Cullors and so on, and they're talking about how there was the Wall Street guys who were, there's like another movement. They're asking like, well, how do you know that you're not going to be like those people? And they're like, well, they didn't really have a foundation and ideology, but we have an ideology behind us. We're trained Marxists. And if you went on their What We Believe page, or it was what we're about page, whatever, but it's gone now. It's not on their website. Once they started getting a lot of eyes on it, people started taking it down, and not just eyes on it, but the right eyes, like mainstream people with like different like athletes and sports commentators were just like, these people are talking about disrupting the Western prescribed nuclear family and all sorts of other things, and those things are bad. So within their What We Believe page, they talked about disrupting the family, the Western prescribed nuclear family, as they put it, and they also talked about dismantling cisgender privilege. Now, if you supported BLM, feel shame. If you still have them in your bio, in your profile or whatever, it's not too late to scrub that and delete it. But they did talk about dismantling cisgender privilege. And like, what the heck is cisgender privilege? Cisgender privilege would be something like me going to the bathroom and me only expecting there to be other women in there. Cisgender privilege would be something like Riley Gaines getting able to swim on a team and swim against other teams that are all female. Those things are cisgender privilege. Cisgender privilege is being able to go into a women's prison, and it's a women's prison. To go into the spa, and if you're naked, there's not a man who has his penis out saying that he's a woman and expecting that not to be there. Those are all cisgender privileges, apparently. I wrote an article about BLM back in the day. I guess maybe it was about 2 years ago. I wrote an article talking about their page, and I think it was like how BLM duped Christians or something. I think that's what it's called, and it goes through some of the things that they believe and talks about, cisgender privilege, and it has like an example of like somebody that Katie Couric interviewed, and a big list of what they had. Or you could ask some BLM people that you personally know and say, hey, when you guys said that you wanted to dismantle cisgender privilege, what did you mean? But cisgender privilege, an example that I heard was like being able to find a heel in your size. And I'm like, I want that privilege. I mean, I can find heels, but it's kind of it's harder for me than it is for someone with a smaller foot. Definitely, it's nothing to cause a stink about. Sorry that you're a dude and you want to wear high-heeled shoes. You can make some, and I'm sure your niche market, wherever the drag queens get their shoes, they charge a good price for it. But there's someone supplying things for your niche. Certainly. So just know that this stuff is incorporated in a lot of like leftist ideology and things that they push. CRT, this opposition to whiteness, like defining whiteness and then opposing it when white people don't really tend to have some kind of big identity, but they want them to have this big identity, and then they want it to be bad. And we've talked a lot about the infographic that was at the African American History Museum, and they talked about whiteness in America, and they had things like I don't know, being attracted to men who have good jobs and private property, believing in a single God concept, being optimistic about the future, respecting authority, things like that. All kinds of crazy stuff. You can just Google it. I do have it stored, and I can just show you guys what it looks like really quick. I don't want to read through the whole thing again. We've done it so many times. That's why I never delete it, but you can just Google it, the whiteness in America infographic, and it'll pop up. And when I first talked to my cousins about this and I showed it to them, they thought it was a joke. And then I talked about it again, like, hold up, that's real? Yes, it's one of the most racist things you'll ever see. I'm certain of it. But just know that these things are integrated and ingrained into a lot of these progressive organizations that were uplifted and trying to destroy society. So they get at that family, they bully you into not being able to say the truth. Like if you say something like Dylan Mulvaney is a man, people will come at you. Dylan doesn't even want that to be legal, or at least has expressed that. I don't know how much in depth he's thought about actually implementing a policy, but there are people who want you to, the people who are losing their kids for not respecting their gender identity. And we talked last week how in California, the state of California is suing a school district because they're saying that if a child, like they change their pronouns or something like that in school, and they're referring to themselves as a different, gender identity or whatever, that they're trans, that's something that you have to report to the parent. So they're suing the school, and they're calling it the outing kids bill or something like that. You guys are treating them with affirmation, people who have gender dysphoria, that's something that you guys keep saying that people will unalive themselves. And you don't want to tell the parents. You want to keep that a big secret. They're already out. You're just keeping a secret from the parent. And they're suing the school district for wanting to give information to parents. So that's where we're at. Not in Canada, in the United States of America. In the United States of America. Canada's messed up too. As a Canadian friend of mine just did a video complaining about Canada and how they issued some kind of advisory warning about gay people going to the United States, especially in different states that are passing laws that you can't mutilate your kids. And he just thought it was so stupid. It is stupid. But that's where we are today. So I just want to bring that to the forefront of some of the stuff that you're here is talking about?
This they don't understand, and it will be greatest shock for them, of course. The demoralization process in the United States is basically completed already. For the last 25 years. Actually, it's overfulfilled because demoralization now reaches such areas where previously not even Comrade Andropov and all his experts would even dream of such a tremendous success. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he is going to receive a kick in his fat bottom. When a military boot crashes his, then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragic of the situation of demoralization. So basically, America is stuck with demoralization, and unless, even if you start right now, here, this minute, you start educating new generation of Americans, it will still take you 15 to 20 years to turn the tide of ideological perception of reality back to normalcy and patriotism. The next stage is destabilization. This time, subverter does not care about your ideas and the patterns of your consumption. Whether you eat junk food and get fat and flabby, it doesn't matter anymore. This time, and it takes only from 2 to 5 years to destabilize a nation. It's what matters is essentials: economy, foreign relations, defense systems. And you can see it quite clearly that in some areas, in such sensitive areas as defense and economy, the influence of Marxist-Leninist ideas in the United States is absolutely fantastic. I could never believe it 14 years ago when I landed in this part of the world that the process will go that fast. The next stage, of course, is crisis. It may take only up to 6 weeks to bring a country to the verge of crisis. You can see it in Central America now. And after crisis, with a violent change of power, structure, and economy, you have so-called the period of normalization. It may last indefinitely. Normalization is a cynical expression borrowed from Soviet propaganda. When the Soviet tanks moved into Czechoslovakia in '68, Comrade Brezhnev said, now the situation in brotherly Czechoslovakia is normalized. This is what will happen in the United States if you allow all these schmucks to bring the country to crisis, to promise people all kind of goodies and the paradise on earth, to destabilize your economy, to eliminate the principle of free market competition, and to put a big brother government in Washington, D.C., with benevolent dictators like Walter Mondale, who will promise lots of things, never mind whether the promises are fulfillable or not. He will go to Moscow to kiss the bottoms of new generation of Soviet assassins. Never mind, he will create false illusions that the situation is under control. Situation is not under control. Situation is disgustingly out of control. Most of the American politicians, media, and educational system trains another generation of people who think they are living at a peacetime. False. The United States is in the state of war, undeclared total war against the basic principles and the foundations of this system. And the initiator of this war is not Comrade Andropov, of course. It's the system. However ridiculous it may sound, the world communist system or the world communist conspiracy, whether I scare some people or not, I don't give a hoot. If you are not scared by now, nothing can scare you. But you don't have to be paranoid about it. What actually happens now, that unlike myself, you have literally several years to live on unless the United States wake up. The time bomb is ticking, that every second The disaster is coming closer and closer. Unlike myself, you will have nowhere to defect to, unless you want to live in Antarctica with penguins. This is it. This is the last country of freedom and possibility.
Okay, so what do we do? What is your recommendation to the American people?
Well, the immediate thing that comes to my mind is, of course, there must be a very strong national effort to educate people in the spirit of real patriotism, number one. Number two, to explain them the real danger of socialist, communist, whatever, welfare state, big brother government. If people will fail to grasp the impending danger of that development, nothing ever can help United States. You may kiss goodbye to your freedom, including freedoms to homosexuals, to prison inmate. All this freedom will vanish, evaporate in 5 seconds, including your precious lives. The second thing, the moment at least part of United States population is convinced that the danger is real, they have to force their government. And I'm not talking about sending letters, signing petitions, and all this beautiful, noble activity. I'm talking about forcing United States government to stop aiding communism. Because there is no other problem more burning and urgent than to stop the Soviet military-industrial complex from destroying whatever is left of the free world. And it is very easy to do. No credits, no technology, no money, no political or diplomatic recognition, and of course, no such idiocy as grain deals to USSR. The Soviet people, 270 millions of Soviets, will be eternally thankful to you if you stop aiding a bunch of murderers who sit now in Kremlin and whom President Reagan respectfully calls government. They do not govern anything, least of all such complexity as the Soviet economy. So basic, two very simple, maybe too simplistic answers or solutions, but nevertheless, they are the only solutions. Educate yourself, understand what's going on around you. You are not living at the time of peace. You are in a state of war, and you have precious little time to save yourself. You don't have much time, especially if you are talking about young generation. There's not much time left for convulsions to the beautiful disco music. Very soon it will go, just overnight. If we are talking about capitalists or wealthy businessmen, I think they are selling the rope on which they will hang very soon. If they don't stop, if they cannot curb their unsettled desire for profit, and if they keep on trading with the monster of the Soviet communism, they are going to hang very soon. And they will pray to be killed, but unfortunately they will be sent to Alaska probably to manage industry of slaves. It's simplistic. I know it sounds unpleasant. I know Americans don't like to listen to things which are unpleasant. But I have defected not to tell you the stories about such idiocy as microfilm, James Bond type espionage. This is garbage. You don't need any espionage anymore. I have come to talk about survival. It's a question of survival of this system. You may ask me, what is it in for me? Survival, obviously, because unlike, as I said, I am now in your boat. If we sing together, we will sing beautifully together. There is no other place on this planet to defect to.
So, think about that interview a lot. So I wanted to share because I do think that we are in a point where people cannot tell the truth anymore. I mean, not like physically say it, like if you show someone like stone cold undeniable evidence of something that is universally true, and I think the gender identity stuff is a big example. And they're like, nope, you're wrong. You're wrong. They'll say, you just, all you had was biology. You don't understand. We got a Supreme Court justice who was asked, like, what is a woman? And she's like, I don't know. I guess the next question should have been, is she a woman? Like, how does she know that? And it's just like, well, I'm not a biologist. Like, do you really need to be a biologist to know that? You really need to be a biologist? And there's all these phrases and things that, like, you are cisgender. That's like, you can't be cisgender if you don't buy into gender identity. Either you are a woman or you're not. And I am a woman, but not because I believe that, just because I am a woman. So no, I'm not cisgender, because that would imply that I buy into the fantasy or the delusion. But all this stuff does it hurts our social fabric. It's bleeding into our military. Not bleeding, it's there. We're hemorrhaging, I guess. Our institutions, our education system. And he talked about, we're basically screwed as long as we keep, building the government, and people want their free goodies and their entitlements and their social programs and stuff. That's one reason, like, people are like, well, you're pro-life, why don't you support all these things to help, like free college and paid maternity leave and in pre-K? And I'm like, those things are good if you can afford it. Those things are great if your company wants to pay for it. But if we keep taxing people and the government keeps getting bigger and the bureaucracy keeps getting bigger and you keep giving the government control of your life, I don't think it's a good thing. I don't think it's a good thing. One of the reasons why the Supreme Court ruled against, like, nurses and stuff with the COVID jab requirements is because, well, they're like, well, you take Medicaid or Medicare, whatever it is, and because you take that stuff, well, you take that government money, so we can control that you have to take this, essentially. So shouldn't that send off, like, alarm bells, that the more entangled you are with the government, the more that the more strings that are attached to you, and the more that they can do to you, the more that they can control. What happens when they turn totally against you? But they want to force you to do things that maybe you don't agree with. So that's why I'm leery about it. I don't think people should. I'm not saying that I don't believe in some kind of social safety nets and stuff, but I don't believe in creating this permanent system where we just give them more control over our lives. That's what I'm against. That's what I fear. So I think those are important words from Yuri there, because you can definitely see how we are destabilizing ourselves. There's some other instances I wanted to show you guys about why we're in such bad shape. One, because of our experts, so-called experts, and another because of our media. So I want to show you this interview from over the weekend that people were talking about. They're making its rounds, from Philip Bump. And he's with the Washington Post. And so he was in an interview, and he had been, again, I said this already, but he had been in the interview for a while. So I don't totally, begrudge him from being frustrated, but I begrudge him for being someone who's supposed to be telling the truth to people and pretending that there's not ample evidence when he works for the Washington Post. It's not like he works for some organization that is, really, really obscure and they don't have access to information. These are the people who folks rely on for honest reporting. So this has really been circulating around.
What do you take from the text message to his adult daughter? Hunter's text message: I have to give 50% of my income to Pop.
I have no idea what that means. I have no idea what that means.
Well, it's
I know it's circumstantial evidence, and you prefer that.
No,
to
what could it be?
I have no idea.
But doesn't it?
I don't know.
Well,
I appreciate your.
Has anybody asked her?
I don't know. I don't know.
Don't you think somebody should ask her?
Okay. Like I'm not. I just said I don't know, and I don't know what to make of it, so I have nothing else to say about it.
Yeah,
what do you want me to say?
Yeah, but you say there's no evidence. But then there's a text message where he says, "I give Pop 50% of my money." That's evidence.
Okay. Well, okay. Fine.
So
it's evidence. I appreciate you having me on.
it doesn't. That something like that. Who do you think is more? I listen to that and I'm saying,
Am
okay,
I? Am I?
okay,
What,
you can free to go.
I feel you want me to leave, like just walk out in the middle of this, because that way you can
you can go.
All right.
Is this a standard? Really, this is the way the Washington Post handles people who disagree with them.
When I agree to be on for 45 minutes,
go,
and then
go.
I get on for an hour and 15. Yeah, that after a while I go.
Go.
Thanks for having me.
So the you just want me to leave because people are saying he's like rage quit and stuff. He was there for a minute, I guess, longer than he agreed to be on. So I don't want to totally dump on him for that. But the idea that people say there's no evidence between Joe Biden and Hunter Biden tying them with their business deals, when we know the goalpost kept shifting from Joe Biden doesn't talk to Hunter about his business, doesn't know anything about it. They're literally going on airplanes to the same place where Hunter does business and all kinds of different stuff. You had people who worked with Hunter and this is before the 2020 election, right? Who said, in these emails, this stuff from, Hunter's laptop, and they're talking about 50% or whatever X amount goes to the big guy. They're talking about Joe Biden. And people just wanted to ignore that. And people wanted to ignore the laptop and say it was Russian disinformation, which, apparently Anthony Blinken is the one who allegedly put that together for these experts to, or put it out there for them to put it a collective sign letter that says this has all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation, when it was absolutely true, which I think is pretty grotesque that the president right now was pushing this propaganda to blame a nuclear powered company of interfering with our elections. I think that's pretty wild that people don't kind of grasp the gravity of that particular lie. But, he's sitting in the White House. So he used to say that I don't know anything about it. And so information kept coming out. So the goalpost has moved to, well, I was never in business with my son. And they continue to move the goalpost. So for a long time, we have known about this text message that Hunter Biden sent to his daughter saying, like, I pay for all these bills and, for the family, take care of the family. And it says, well, he's complaining to his daughter about all that he has to do, I guess, to make her grateful for all the stuff that she has and all that his dad does. And he's like, well, luckily for you, I won't take, he said, I hope that you can take care of the family like I take care of the family. And don't worry, I won't make you give me half like Pop does. So he's saying that his dad gets half his money. So if he's making money from his name of being Hunter Biden and making all these deals and stuff across the world, getting all these benefits, and Hunter has admitted himself to his daughter that he gives half his money to Joe Biden. Of course, Joe Biden is profiting in some kind of way. And there's evidence. Have we found like the smoking gun with the bank account? I'm not sure that I don't think anyone has found that particular gun. But we do have evidence of Hunter just saying it, that his dad gets half his money. And then we have another like WhatsApp message or something. I think it was WhatsApp that he sent to a Chinese businessman and was like, my dad's right here. And people would ignore that too. So there is evidence, whether you think it's hard enough evidence to impeach. I think the standards of when they decided to impeach Trump the first time are pretty much met with Joe Biden right now. So I think they're going to do an impeachment inquiry. If they wanted to flat out just go through that process, they could just straight up impeach this man. But of course, they wouldn't have enough votes to be successful in that. But they lowered the bar with what they did with Trump. And by the way, like Clinton lying back in the day with, Monica Lewinsky and stuff, that some people are like, that seems really tame compared to what's going on nowadays. But you have a reporter who has access to all of this information who just tried to pretend like there was nothing there and got pretty snippy when, it's like, I don't know what that's for. And like, well, should you ask her? Like, I told you, I don't know. Well, why don't you ask her? Why doesn't anyone ask her? Why doesn't anyone just ask her? That sounds like a reasonable question. the reporter might want to do if he has access to, whether they grant access is another thing, but you could try and then report, we tried to reach out, but they didn't have any comment. You could easily do that. Easily. Because they do it all the time. They do it all the time. So we a lot of people don't trust our media. And they shouldn't. And they shouldn't. Because it's clear that they play for a particular side and that they have an agenda. Of course they have an agenda. If you look at the response, now there's people mad about Biden being on vacation and only getting $700 from the Maui situation, but the amount of coverage, negative coverage that they could throw at him versus like if you go back in time or just recall how the media treated George W. Bush during Katrina, vastly different. Vastly different. Vastly different. So people don't trust our media. I also want to show you this Fauci video before we go as well, because this is just, it's just bonkers.
I would hope that if in fact we get to the point where the volume of cases is such and organizations like the CDC recommend, CDC doesn't mandate anything, recommends that people wear masks, I would hope that they abide by the recommendation and take into account the risk to themselves and to their families. And again, we're not talking about forcing anybody to do anything.
Totally understood. There is a perception out there by many, how many I don't know, that they don't work and that the data concludes that they didn't work in the first go round. Respond to that on masks.
Yeah, well, that's not so. When you're talking about at the population level, that the data are less strong than knowing that if you look on a situation as an individual protecting themselves or protecting them from spreading it, there's no doubt that masks work. Different studies give different percentages of advantage of wearing it, but there's no doubt that the weight of the studies, and there have been many studies, indicate the benefit of wearing masks.
I'm going to refer to one of them. You've heard about it before. I heard about it from a number of radio callers. Brett Stevens in The Times talked about Cochrane. Put that on the screen. The most rigorous and comprehensive analysis of scientific studies conducted on the efficacy of masks for reducing the spread of respiratory illness, including COVID-19, was published last month. Its conclusions, said Tom Jefferson, the Oxford epidemiologist who is the lead author, were unambiguous. There is just no evidence that masks, make any difference. He told the journalist Mayan Damasi, full stop. But wait, hold on. What about the N95 masks as opposed to the lower quality surgical or cloth masks? Makes no difference. None of it, he said. Well, what about the studies that initially persuaded policymakers to impose mask mandates? They were convinced by non-randomized studies, flawed observational studies. How do we get beyond that finding of that particular review?
Yeah, but there are other studies, Michael, that show at an individual level for individual. When you're talking about the effect on the epidemic or the pandemic as a whole, the data are less strong. But when you talk about as an individual basis of someone protecting themselves or protecting themselves from spreading it to others, there's no doubt that there are many studies that show that there is an advantage. When you took at the broad population level, like the Cochrane study, the data are less firm with regard to the effect on the overall pandemic. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about an individual's effect on their own safety. That's a bit different than the broad population level.
What is that supposed to mean? So they have this broad population study of masks to see if it works or not, people masking or what, and he's like, no, you gotta look at the individual. How are you comparing it to people who mask all the time, to people who didn't mask all the time? Like, I didn't mask unless I was in a situation where you absolutely had to, like for the 2 seconds when you walk into a restaurant and they allow you to take it off when you go to your table. Everyone knows it's stupid, Fauci. Everyone knows it's stupid. There's a video from an industrial um hygienicist, and they do like environmental exposure, and they tell people or show people and train people about how to keep safe in particular situations. And she just laid out how it was always dumb to have the mask, because if the whether it was the mask that you get with the boxes that literally like the surgical mask, when you buy that box, it literally says on the box that it does not protect you from COVID-19. Says that right on the box. Even like the N95 masks don't work. And when you wear masks, you have to be like clean shaven, and they have to be fitted to your mask, to your face. They only work for a certain amount of time. There's the environment that you're in. What about the aerosols or whatever coming to your eyes? And she just laid out all these different things that didn't make sense. And she's like, and I know the government knows that it wouldn't have worked and was ridiculous, because we trained them and showed them what to do. So Fauci, if you go look at earlier interviews pre-pandemic era, talking about other situations with masks and stuff, you'll say like, oh, that's silly. We wouldn't react the way that we reacted in other scenarios. There was a benefit to, and at first they were saying don't use the mask, by the way, and then they're like, oh, we just told people not to use that because we didn't want other people to buy the mask and use it up from like medical people. And I can understand you wanting to use them, save them for medical people, but you also like decided to roll the dice. If you really believed that the masks were that important, you could have just said, please do not use all these masks up and buy these particular masks when we need our surgical people in the hospitals to use them. Please make your own. That's what they could have said. And a lot of people just made their own. My mom made her own. That's what they could have done, but they decided to, if it's really as useful as they say and as dangerous to go out without them, they rolled the dice and said that, well, these people who are working in the they need them, and it's totally okay if you go die. That's a risk we're willing to take, and I get it if that's the risk they're willing to take, but I think it just would have been more ethical if they just said, hey, you still need this, but we really need you to make your own. They could have done that. They could have done that, but that's of course not what they decided to do. So that should have really breached the trust of people then. But you know what? People just doubled down, and they bought candles and pillows and memorabilia and paintings of Fauci, and they uplifted him to such a high level, and they just didn't want to question him, and they questioned everyone who questioned him, and they just did this huge hero worship thing, and they didn't want to turn back. And there's a lot of people who haven't turned back, and there's some people who apologize for how crazy they were during that period of time, but I think most people haven't. They try to like kind of gaslight you and be like, what do you mean? Like, no one ever tried to force you to hijab. No one tried to force you to wear a mask. No one vaccine passports weren't a thing. Like, what are you talking about? Those things just, they'll just memory wipe it like it wasn't as bad as as it was. And you guys, it wasn't too long ago, so I'm sure you guys remember what it was like living in that time. But they just try to memory hole and just lie. Fauci has gone back and tried to lie. I saw a video today, a compilation of him saying we did not say to shut the country down. We did not advise to shut the country down. And then in another interview was like, it was like July. He said he didn't say to shut the country down. August interview, he said he didn't say to shut the country down. And then I think October, like, we said to shut the country down. And from my understanding from Dr. Bricks's book is that she wanted to shut the country down. And so then she convinced Fauci and other people to go along with it. And apparently they did not even have the data to support shutting down the country, but they hoped that that data would just kind of manifest. So, I think it sucks that we have institutions that we don't feel that we can trust, but I think it's good to have a healthy distrust. That doesn't mean that you're right about things, especially things that you're not an expert, in. If you're not an expert in that field or whatever, and you're just going off of your instincts or whatever, but that doesn't mean your instincts are bad or that they're wrong. Sometimes it's good to trust your gut, but sometimes it is good to listen to people, but they have to be consistent and they have to be honest, and they have to be honest with you as information changes, not hoping that the information will morph into what they want it to be to achieve whatever goal. And there was information that was hidden from people because they didn't want people to react a certain way to the particular information that was out there, and they just totally destroyed public trust. But they're still trying to push the mask thing. I've seen people start to break out the masks as well, and they're trying to bring back COVID hype and COVID fear. I never really bought into it. And I'm not saying that it didn't happen or wasn't awful, because you guys, if you follow me long enough, you know that my dad was in the hospital for some time with COVID, and that was a really tough experience. So I'm not trying to go down a crazy rabbit hole of saying that stuff didn't happen, but our reaction was unreasonable. Our reaction was unreasonable. How we reacted to each other, and by we, I just mean general public. I don't mean myself. Our government, our officials. Like, when I saw the Great Barrington Declaration, I'm like, that makes sense to me. Like, I don't think we should shut down everything. We should try to protect those who are compromised, our elderly, and those who have, comorbidities that, be really harmful to them if they caught it. And but we should continue trying to make civilization, go on. The earth has to keep spinning. We can't just stop everything. And, you had people who tried to delegitimize that, Fauci and other folks who wanted to delegitimize that because they, I don't know, have whatever agenda or narrative or prescription that they wanted for the country, that ultimately really hurt a lot of people, that made a lot of people have to live out their last days alone, that deteriorated, the elderly who were isolated, that has took a chisel and a hammer and a mallet and a chainsaw to children's learning, and really stalled a lot of people. We've done a lot of damage for our reaction to it, and I'm not convinced that we would not do it again. I'm not, because people didn't take enough time to reflect and say we made a mistake or I poorly behaved. They just try to pretend like history that's, a year or two old just didn't happen. That's what they're trying to do. So, one of the reasons, and I'll say this and then I'll close. One of the reasons why I think that Donald Trump is least likely not going to be president again. I'm sorry. One of the reasons why he's most likely going to not be president again is because it's very hard for people to change their minds, but more importantly, it's very difficult for people to admit that they were wrong. So throwing out like the indictments and all that other kind of stuff, just the fact that you're asking so many people who chose to vote against him to decide to vote for him. And I'm not saying that people can't do that, but you're asking for, it doesn't have to be millions of people, but there are like, a large difference in the votes, like 2 million, right? But it doesn't need to be 2 million. It just needs to be, thousands of people, tens of thousands of people in particular strategic areas. And it's not undoable. It's not impossible. But think back to the pandemic and think how irrational and evil and vindictive and afraid some people were, to a degree that was just so unreasonable. And people don't want to admit that they made a mistake. They'll say that it was justified, or they'll just pretend like it wasn't as bad as it was. And I don't it's pretty crazy to think that there's people who are like that, but they're everywhere. They are everywhere. If you I've gone on like TikTok live or seen different videos of like different folks who will mock people on the right. They're like, "You didn't get vaccinated, did you?" And there's like laughing about it. And I'm like, why is that something to make fun of them about? They obviously lived. They obviously lived. So why are you mocking them for not getting the jab? They obviously made it out okay. Like maybe you could say that they should have did it and it was a gamble, but it obviously paid off for him. So I don't. What kind of flex is this? And so they still think it's insulting that people didn't go ahead and get jabbed. And these are people with big platforms, not just randos. So if there's people like that out there, and you can be mad at me for saying this, if people are that so stuck in their ways and that narrative, do you think there's that many people out there that are like, oh my gosh, I made a mistake in 2020 and I need to correct it, especially if it's just a rematch? Because to a lot of people, it's not to them a step forward in the right direction. They'll just see it as a step backward. They don't see it as an undo button. They don't see it as correct. A lot of people aren't correctable, unfortunately. And you might say, well, there's a lot of videos of people saying they're waking up and they're voting for Trump. How do you know those people haven't voted before? Or you could say, well, I don't believe 81 million people voted for Joe Biden. If you think it's impossible that 81 million actually voted for Joe Biden when we had all these mail-in ballots and stuff. So and people were like pressuring people to get your ballot turned in, get your ballot. Like, I don't know if you guys remember that hype or not, but there was pressure there. And it was, people didn't have to stand in line. They could just send in a ballot. So it was a lower threshold to participate for low information voters. But if you don't believe there's that many people who would make that massive mistake of supporting Joe Biden, you don't get out enough. You don't talk to enough people. You don't get outside your algorithm on social media enough. I promise you, there's enough people who would make that mistake. I promise you, especially when you harvested their ballots. I promise you, there are. So I think the biggest hurdle for Trump isn't just his indictments and other things, and those things will play a role, whether they help or hurt. I think they'll help him in the primary, maybe hurt him in the general. But I think the biggest thing is that you are asking too much of the average person who can't even like look at evidence in front of them and see someone who's obviously a man in a skirt and be like, that they say they're a woman, so I gotta respect their pronouns. That there be an educated woman sitting to be selected for the Supreme Court, knowing that people have to vote for her. And they say, what is a woman? And this grown woman will shrug and say, I don't know. And she's still got that seat. So don't tell me there's not enough people who would make that mistake for voting for Joe Biden. But don't be optimistic that they're ready to change their mind. Don't have that much faith in humanity. Absolutely not. You don't. If you really think it's that impossible, again, you don't talk to enough people, especially enough people that disagree with you. If you don't think those numbers can possibly make sense. Because he got more votes than Obama. It was a different time. They both did. They both did. So you guys think one person's amount is fake, but not the other one? Come on, guys. Just there's crazy people out there, guys. There's people who their number one reason why they voted for Joe Biden was because of the border and then they're making fun of Trump because Trump's like, hey, there's kids who are still not with their families because coyotes brought them over, and these people think that he means Wile E. Coyote. Yeah, I believe that there's 81 million people who voted for Joe Biden. I do. And I think that should scare you. Anyway, thank you guys for being with me today. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, different articles, different videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. Cost of stream and run my website and all the stuff so if you guys can support in that way. Thank you very much. I do very much appreciate it, whether it's a small gift of $10 or $20 or more. It goes a long way. So again, thank you if you can support in that way, whether it's, when you watch and you give stars or super chats or super thanks. But you can go right to the website. There's a link in the description. Also, please check out, if you're in the Michigan area, go to brightermi.com to get your tickets to go see Tucker Carlson. It will be on Sunday. I will be there as well. So I hope to see you guys there. There'll be a concert. They're going to be supporting our law enforcement, first responders. They're going to give out scholarships. So it'll be a really great time. And I'm looking forward to seeing Tucker. I briefly met him back in the days of the inauguration. I was at Trump's inaugural ball, and I happened to stumble upon a line of people, and they were all crowded around Tucker. So I patiently waited, and then his people kind of tried to shove him off because I had something to do. And he's like, "She's been waiting." So we had a little chat. So I'm again looking forward to seeing him again. So I do have a link in the description that will take you to some discounted tickets, but the tickets do start at $50. If you don't want the seats that I have that are discounted, please just go to the website and go buy a ticket. But I hope to see you guys there. I hope you guys support. It is a fundraiser for Brighter Mission PAC. They do a lot of great work. Please check out different merchandise that I have on my website, different t-shirts, different mugs, and etc. You guys can check out my book, of course, God is Blatantly Against Abortion. It's available on Amazon. It's also available on Barnes and Noble. And it covers theology, it covers rights, it covers politics, it covers science, it covers philosophy, it covers a lot. So I hope you guys check it out and you appreciate it and you like it. And I hope it blesses you. God bless you guys. And I will see you guys tomorrow.